Hey Greg, it's Professor Fisher. I got your request for help with the Java interfaces example. So first, let's take a look at the assignment. So this is actually before the assignment, talking about what is a Java interface. And a Java interface can include both constant data. So if maybe you had let me think here. So let's say you needed to identify numeric values for north, south, east, and west. You could set them up in an interface, and you could say, north is 90, east is 0, west is 180, okay, etc. And south would be 270. So you could define that, and then any class that implements that interface would then have access to those variables, and you would make sure that you have consistency between the subclasses, so that all subclasses use the same numeric value for north, south, east, and west. The other benefit of using an interface is, and again, it's kind of hard because in class we're dealing with smaller projects, but is to provide a template that when classes implement that interface, everybody has to provide some form of an override for the abstract methods that exist in the interface. So it provides consistency. And this is why this activity is important, because let's just take a look at this example here. So we have the interface called printable, and it has two abstract methods, print setup and print. Now, any classes, such as class instrument, that implements printable, I can now, and let's assume there's more than just instrument. Let's assume there's a couple more classes that implement it. First of all, I have to override the methods, the print setup and the print. But what I can do in my array list, and that's the point of this assignment, is I can create a list of things that need to be printed, and I can use the type of the interface. So instead of saying array list instrument, I'm saying array list printable is equal to a list of things to print, and then equals a new array list. Then when I call the list of things to print.get, and I get an item out of that list, I might be getting an item that's an instrument. And again, now we know instrument has a print method because it had to if it implemented printable. And if there's another class, maybe transaction, because I think this is all about buying and selling instruments. So maybe transaction also implements printable. So in that case, when you do list of things, if the next item in the array list is a transaction, it would use the print method from the transaction class to print the information. All right, let me drag over NetBeans over here. And I have your app open. And I think we might want to revisit. I'm not sure where you were going with the component builder as your interface. So I think maybe we should revisit what the interface looks like. So looking at your app, I was trying to figure out what might be a good interface, and I would actually recommend, because it's such a different app, is that you just go ahead and use the printable interface, just like we saw in the example. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to create a new interface, and let's call it printable, and then any class that you have can implement the printable interface. All right, so here, and then in here you're going to have public void print. And I didn't explicitly say abstract, but because it's inside of an interface, it is automatically abstract, but I am going to add that just so that it's clear. All right, now let's say under, let's say slot parameters.java. It has two fields. It has duration and num slots. So let's say there's a time where you want to be able to print out that information. So here we can do implements printable. And when I do that, it's going to give me an error because I didn't implement the print method yet. So if I click on my little light bulb over here, I can go ahead and say implement all abstract methods. Now there is only one. Okay, I try to keep it simple. So I'm going to get rid of this message that throws an error. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and print out some information. I'm going to say the number of slots is... Okay, and then I go ahead and I use num slots. All right, and then right below that, I'll just do a second line where I say the duration is, and I'm going to use the duration variable. Alright, so there's one class that's implementing printable. Let's do a second one. So let's take, I don't know, player prof. Okay, it has, again, 2 values there. And right now there's no print method, so it's a good candidate for that. So let's go ahead and say implements printable. And maybe you'll only need this for your testing phase because you don't really want these things to be printed later on, but that's okay. So implements printable. Again, I have to implement the abstract method. I come down here and I can very quickly just go ahead and say, this time I'm just going to say I'm in the player prof class. You'll want to actually change this to print out some pertinent information to the player prof class, but I wanted to just show you in our test harness how we can create instances of the player prof and the slot parameters classes and then loop through them and print the information. So let's take a look next at our test harness. Okay, and just for right now, I am going to comment all this out because I don't really need that for this test, and I'm just going to do asterisk slash or slash asterisk and then asterisk slash. Whoops, asterisk slash. Okay, and so now, like I said earlier, we looked at the assignment. You're going to create an array list of type printable using the interface as your type. Okay, and I'll just call it print list. Okay, and that is equal to a new array list. I'm going to leave the angle brackets empty because it will automatically infer from the left hand side that the right hand side is printable. I'm going to import java.util.ArrayList, and now I'm going to add some items to it. So let's see, I want to do print list.add, and I want to add an instance of the slot parameters. So slot underscore parameters, and I'm not sure, I guess I need, it looks like I need an integer. It looks like I need 2 integers. One is a duration and the other one is the number of slots. And I don't know what these values should be, so I'm just going to pick some random numbers and hope that that's good. Okay, and then next I'm going to add another one. Let's do print list.add. Let's do a new slot underscore parameters again. Oops. Some different numbers. And finally, the last thing I want to do is add another type of class. And this time I'm going to add the player prof. New player prof. And what does it require? It requires nothing. Okay, so I can just do that. Oops, I got a capital I there by mistake. Okay, now I have 3 different objects in the same array list, but they all implement printable, so it's not a problem. So now what I can do is I can have a for loop, and I like a for each loop. So I type FORE tab, it opens it up for me. And notice that it's using printable as the type, and it's using the print list. And now inside here, oops, sorry. Inside here, what I want to do is I want to take each object, printable, dot, print, and it's going to automatically call the right print method based on the object type that was added to the array list. Okay, let's run this. Oops, I have to change it so that we execute our test harness. So let me just go to here, and I'm just going to, right here, I'm just going to go ahead and say new test harness, so that it automatically invokes that, and then the rest of it will run as well, but let me go ahead and just do that. Alright, and you can see that the first object was a slot parameters, so it printed out 5 and 5. The second object was another one, 30 and 10, but the third object was just printed out, I'm in the player prof class, and then the rest of it is the information that you have for your app. Okay, Greg, I hope this helps to clear up a little bit about how to use the interfaces. Let me go back over to our assignment here. How to create an interface and then implement that interface and then use an array list of type interface. They say here to include heterogeneous collections of objects, but those objects all implement printable. Let me know if you have more questions.